we need to fix the pictures. So I've updated the stream title and whatnot. So we have to go, we need to change our poster and we need to find the new book. So we're going to go over to here. See book poster. Here we are. I'm going to let's see Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Well, strange cases under as yeah, the book is not as perhaps that's the wrong thing. That's not what I once said. There we go. There we go. The poster is not as interesting as the other one. And I'll just here. There was always that size. Okay, that's just how big the poster is. It couldn't possibly have been smaller, right? That doesn't make any sense. And then the book, The Strange Case, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We'll put the other book away. Right, one of the cats can do that. I'm sure that will go down fine. Yeah, we can start reading this one soon. This one's also has like a pretty important message right at the end of the day. At the end of it, something about inhibitions and stuff, and you're in like self-control, which is kind of interesting, and hopefully is not as heavy or deep as All Quiet on the Western Front. That was a hell of a story. Yeah, it was good to read. But I now have to go and grab the URL for this one, which is right here. Copy URL. And we go to the website. We use the, where's the browser over here? The Gutenberg website for all of our public domain needs. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. You don't have chapters so much as, well, you don't have chapter in the story of the door. Okay, it looks like each chapter just has a name, which is going to be annoying. So like, was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 chapters. It's just kind of awkward that none of them have a name. So I'm going to have to try and remember the numbers. So I do a chapter marker in my video stream. And I say, hey, chapter 1, 2, or 3. So when I'm editing, I can put appropriate chapter markers in the YouTube VOD. I'm getting a report from my old EVE Online group. Staying bloodthirsty. EVE Online was a very interesting game. Hung out with a lot of people from the military, actually. There's a lot of military folk who like that game. Very disciplined communications over comms and stuff. It was well organized and well done. I'll get back to him later. I have implemented the new commands of Elena. So cancel word list is just CWL and then cancel word for the word. It's like, it's that easy. That simple. All right. Okay. Chapter 1, Story of the Door. Mr. Utterson, the lawyer, was a man of a rugged countenance that was never lighted by a smile, cold, scanty, and embarrassed in discourse, backward in sentiment, lean, long, dusty, dreary, yet somehow lovable. At friendly meetings, and when the wine was to his taste, something eminently human beckoned from his eye. Something indeed which never found its way to his talk, but which spoke not only in these silent symbols of the after-dinner face, but more often and loudly in the acts of his life. He was austere? I know there's a better way to say that, with himself. Drank gin when he was alone to mortify a taste for vintages, and though he enjoyed the theater, had he crossed the doors, Hang on. This would be one of those stories with grammar that I don't like. He was astir with himself, drank gin when he was alone, to mortify a taste for vintages, and though he enjoyed the theatre, had not crossed the doors of one for 20 years. There we go. My brain's okay now. But he had approved... Oh, hang on. Do I have to make this even bigger? Oh my goodness. The writing on here is so tiny. We're going to go to like 250% zoom. Holy, my eyes are bad. But he had an approved tolerance for others, sometimes wondering almost with envy at the high pressure of spirits involved in their misdeeds, and in any extremity inclined to help rather than to reprove. I incline to Cain's heresy, he used to say quaintly. I let my brother go to the devil in his own way. In this character, it was frequently his fortune to be the last reputable acquaintance and the last good influence in the lives of down-going men. And to such as these, so long as they came about his chambers, he never marked a shade of change in his demeanor. No doubt the feat was easy to Mr. Utterson, for he was undemonstrative at the best, and even his friendship seemed to be founded in a similar catholicity of good nature. It's like the Catholicity. There we go. The Catholicity. It is the mark of a modest man to accept his friendly circle ready-made from the hands of opportunity, and that was the lawyer's way. His friends were those of his own blood, or those whom he had known the longest. His affections, like ivy, were the growth of time. They implied no aptness in the object. Hence, no doubt, the bond that united him to Mr. Richard Enfield, his distant kinsman, the well-known man about town. It was a nut to crack for many what these two could see in each other, or what subject they could find in common. A hiccup. It was reported by those who encountered them in their Sunday walks that they said nothing, looked singularly dull, and would hail with obvious relief at the appearance of a friend. For all that, the two men put the greatest store in these excursions, counted them the chief jewel of each week, and not only set aside occasions of pleasure, but even resisted the calls of business, that they might enjoy them uninterrupted. It chanced on one of these rambles that their way led them down a by-street in a busy quarter of London. The street was small and what is called quiet, but it drove a thriving trade on the weekdays. The inhabitants were all doing well, it seemed, and all emulously hoping to do better still, and lay out on the surplus of their gains in coquetry. Their gains in coquetry. We all know that word, right? Obviously, that's a word we all know. I won't even bother to explain it. So that the shop fronts stood along the thoroughfare with an air of invitation, like rows of smiling saleswomen. Even on Sunday, when it veiled its more florid charms and lay comparatively empty of passage, the street shone out in contrast to its dingy neighborhood, like a fire in a forest, and with its freshly painted shutters, well-polished brasses, and general cleanliness of gaiety of note, instantly caught and pleased the eye of the passenger. Yeah, that's what I said, Flana. Thanks, yeah. Obviously, yeah. 2 doors from one corner. Like, another French-based word. Yeah, you want to stop that? Just stop making all the words French-based. That'd be great. It's like, it's a group of people, like, wasn't English the first language in the world and everything was derived from English? Well, yeah. So we heard someone say in a report that someone thought that the Bible was originally made in English and then translated into dead languages. People, you suck. Humans, what are you going to do? Let's see. Two doors from one corner on the left hand going east. The line was broken by the entry of a court, and just at that point a certain sinister block of building thrust forward its gable on the street. It was 2 stories high, showed no window, nothing but a door on the lower story and a blind forehead of discolored wall on the upper, and bore in every feature the marks of a prolonged and sordid negligence. The door, which was equipped with neither bell nor knocker, was blistered and disdained. Tramps slouched into the recesses and struck matches on the panels. Children kept shop upon the steps. The schoolboy had tried his knife on the moldings, and for close on a generation no one had appeared to drive away these random visitors or to repair their ravages. Mr. Enfield and the lawyer were on the other side of the street, on the other side of the by-street, but when they came abreast of the entry, the former lifted up his cane and pointed. "Did you ever remark that door?" he asked, and when his companion had replied in the affirmative, "It is connected in my mind," added he, "with a very odd story." "Indeed?" said Mr. Utterson, with a slight change of voice. "And what was that?" "Well, it was this way," returned Mr. Enfield. "I was coming home from some place at the end of the world about 3 o'clock of a black winter morning, and my way lay through a part of town where there was literally nothing to be seen but lamps. Street after street, and all the folks asleep. Street after street, all lighted up as if for a procession, and all as empty as a church, till at last I got into that state of mind when a man listens and begins to long for the sight of a policeman. All at once I saw 2 figures, one a little man who was stumping along eastward at a good walk, and the other a girl of maybe 8 or 10 who was running as hard as she was able down a cross street. Well, sir, the 2 ran into one another naturally enough at the corner, and then came the horrible part of the thing, for the man trampled calmly over the child's body and left her screaming on the ground. It sounds nothing to hear, but it was hellish to see. It wasn't like a man. It was like some damned juggernaut. I gave a few halloa, took to my heels, collared my gentleman, and brought him back to where there was already a quiet group about the screaming child. He was perfectly cool and made no resistance, but gave me one look, so ugly that it brought out the sweat on me like running. Like running would make you sweat. The people who had turned out were the girl's own family, and pretty soon the doctor, for whom she had been sent, put in his appearance. Well, the child was not much the worse, more frightened, according to the sawbones, and there you might have supposed would be an end to it. But there was one curious circumstance. I had taken a loathing to my gentleman at first sight. So had the child's family, which was only natural. But the doctor's case was what struck me. He was the usual cottage dry apothecary, of no particular age and color, with a strong Edinburgh accent, about as emotional as a bagpipe. Well, sir, he was like the rest of us. Every time he looked at my prisoner, I saw that Sawbones turned sick and white with the desire to kill him. I knew what was in his mind, just as he knew what was in mine, and killing being out of the question, we did the next best. We told the man we could and would make such a scandal out of this as should make his name stink from one end of London to the other. If he had any friends or any credit, we undertook that we should lose them. And all the time, as we were pitching it in red hot, we were keeping the woman off him as best we could, for they were as wild as harpies. I never saw a circle of such hateful faces, and there was the man in the middle, with a kind of black sneering coolness, frightened too, I could see that, but carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. If you choose to make capital out of this accident, said he, I am naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene, says he. Name your figure. Well, we screwed him up into £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to stick out, but there was something about the lot of us that meant mischief, and at the last he struck. The next thing was to get the money, and where do you think he carried us but to that place with the door? Whipping out a key, went in, and presently came back with a matter of £10 in gold and a cheque for the balance on coats drawn payable to the bearer and signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points of my story. But it was a name at least very well known and often printed. The figure was stiff, but the signature was good for more than that if it was only genuine. I took the liberty of pointing out to my gentleman that the whole business looked apocryphal. Yes, apocryphal, and that a man does not, in real life, walk into a cellar door at 4 a.m. and come out with another man's cheque for close upon £100. But he was quite easy and sneering. Set your mind at rest, says he. I will stay with you till the banks open and cash the cheque myself. So we all set off, the doctor, the child's father, and our friend and myself, and passed the rest of the night in my chambers, and next day when we had breakfasted, went in a body to the bank. I gave in the cheque myself and said I have had every reason to believe it was a forgery. Not a bit of it. The cheque was genuine. Tut, tut, said Mr. Utterson. So, first of all, I remember we watched Red do a review of this story, right, Velena? And she described the scene, and I have the same reaction that she did. The guy is an asshole, perhaps, but you just blackmailed him. All he did was knock over a child and moved on about his way. And here you are blackmailing him for £100. You could have just let him walk. Why would you bother? Make sure the girl's okay. And she was clearly fine. They just bumped each other. And no, he's being blackmailed for £100, which back in that day, I'm sure, registered a hell of a lot more than it does today. Good Lord, who were the real evil people in this situation? And then held him prisoner until morning. Good Lord. Tut, tut, said Mr. Utterson. I see you feel as I do, said Mr. Enfield. Yes, it's a bad story, for my man was a fellow that nobody could have to do with, a really damnable man. And the person that drew the cheque is the very pink of the proprietaries, celebrated too, and, what makes it worse, one of your fellows who do what they call good. Blackmail, I suppose, an honest man paying through the nose for some of the captors of his youth. Blackmail House is what I call the place with the door, in consequence. That is some fucking irony. Holy crap. You blackmail the person whom you then believe went blackmail somebody else to account for your blackmail. Amazing. Yeah. Though even that, is far from explaining it all, he added, and with the words fell into a vein of musing. From this he recalled by Mr. Utterson asking rather suddenly, Hello, Fat Panda. Double down on the blackmail? Yeah, blackmail to blackmail. It's just a blackmail cycle. My brain's like, how do I make a joke about a circle jerk, but with blackmail? And I don't know, so I just explained it. There you go. Make your own joke. From this he recalled by Mr. Utterson asking rather suddenly, And you don't know if the drawer of the cheque lives there? A likely place, isn't it? Returned Mr. Enfield, but I happen to have noticed his address. He lives in some square or other. And you never asked about the place with the door, said Mr. Utterson. No, sir. I had a delicacy, was the reply. I feel very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of the style of the day of judgment. You start a question, and it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly on the top of a hill, and away the stone goes, starting others, and presently some bland old bird, the last you would have thought of it, is knocked on the head in his own back garden, and the family have to change their name. No, sir, I make it a rule of mine. The more it looks like Queer Street, the less I ask. That's a hell of a trip for that point. A very good rule, too, said the lawyer, which I believe was Mr. Utterson. But I have studied the place for myself, continued Mr. Enfield. It seems scarcely a house. There is no other door, and nobody goes in or out of that one but once in a great while, the gentleman of my adventure. There are 3 windows looking on the court on the first floor, none below. The windows are always shut, but they're clean, and there is a chimney which is generally smoking. So somebody must live there. So wait, are there windows or not? There were no windows in the first section. In a little ago. Now there's 3. I'm confused. I also lost my place. And there is a chimney which is generally smoking. So somebody must live there. And yet it's not so sure. For the buildings are so packed together about the court that it's hard to say where one ends and another begins. Fair. Fair. The pair walked on again, and for a while in silence. And then, Enfield, said Mr. Utterson, that's a good rule of yours. Yes, I think it is, returned Enfield. But for all that, continued the lawyer, there is one point I want to ask. I want to ask the name of that man who walked over the child. Well, said Mr. Enfield, I can't see what harm it would do. It was a man of the name of Hyde. Said Mr. Utterson. What sort of man is he to see? He is not easy to describe. Well, apparently, if you look at him, you instantly hate him. So anyone you instantly hate by looking at him, that's probably Hyde. I am now cleaning my glasses because I accidentally touched it with the back of my hand and rambling to buy myself time to do so. Conveniently bringing up the subject of what I am doing to buy myself that time in order to do the thing that I'm talking about. That seems better. There, no one will know what I did. He is not easy to describe. There is something wrong with his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. I never saw a man I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. It's because you're a bigot, I guess? It depends why you... Anyways, he must be deformed somewhere. You assume you can't see a deformity. You assume there's a deformity, and that is why you hate him. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't specify the point. What does that even mean? He's an extraordinary looking man. Make up your mind. And yet I really can name nothing out of the way. No, sir, I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. And it's not want of memory, for I declare I can see him this moment. So your description is he is an extraordinary looking man, is what I take away from that. Because the rest of it is you on drugs, bro. What are you talking about? Mr. Utterson again walked some way in silence and obviously under a weight of consideration. You are sure he used a key? He inquired at last. My dear sir, began Enfield, surprised out of himself. Yes, I know, said Utterson. I know it must seem strange. The fact is, if I do not ask you the name of the other party, it is because I know it already. You see, Richard, your tale has gone home. If you have been inexact in any point, you had better correct it. I think you might have warned me, returned the other with a touch of sullenness, but I have been pedantically exact, as you call it. The fellow had a key, and what's more, he has it still. I saw him use it not a week ago. Mr. Utterson sighed deeply, but said never a word, and the young man presently resumed. Here is another lesson to say nothing, said he. I am ashamed of my long tongue. Let us make a bargain never to refer to this again." "With all my heart," said the lawyer. "I shake hands on that, Richard." That's the first paragraph. Oh, itchy. Itchy. Ah. No, it's still itchy. Ah. Okay, probably good enough, hopefully. Chapter 2. Search for Mr. Hyde. That evening, Mr. Utterson came home to his bachelor house in somber spirits and sat down to dinner without relish. Hopefully he still has some ketchup and mustard. It was his custom of a Sunday, when his meal was over, to sit close by the fire, a volume of some dry divinity on his reading desk, until the clock of the neighboring church rang out the hour of 12, when he would go soberly and gratefully to bed. On this night, however, as soon as the cloth was taken away, he took up a candle and went into his business room. There he opened his safe, took from the most private part of it a document endorsed on the envelope as Dr. Jekyll's will, and sat down with a clouded brow to study its contents. The will was holograph for Mr. Utterson, though he took charge of it now that it was made, had refused to lend the least assistance in the making of it. It provided not only that, in case of the decease of Henry Jekyll, M.D., D.C.L., LL.D., F.R.S., etc., all his possessions were to pass into the hands of his friend and benefactor, Edward Hyde, but that in case of Dr. Jekyll's disappearance or unexplained absence for any period exceeding 3 calendar months, that said Edward Hyde should step into the said Henry Jekyll's shoes without any further delay, and free from any burden or obligation beyond the payment of a few small sums to the members of the doctor's household. This document had long been the lawyer's eyesore. It offended him both as a lawyer and as a lover of the sane and customary sides of life, to whom the fanciful was immodest, and hitherto it was his ignorance of Mr. Hyde that had swelled his indignation. Now, by a sudden turn, it was his knowledge. It was already bad enough when the name was but a name of which he could learn no more. It was worse when it began to be clothed upon with detestable attributes, and out of the shifting, insubstantial mists that had so long baffled his eye, there leaped up the sudden, definite presentiment of a fiend. Definite presentiment of a fiend. The story is starting to take on the attributes of the older stories that we've seen and read in the past, where the author has decided more words good. It doesn't matter that the words have solid meaning or help with the flow of the story. My brain just turned off for the last 2 dozen words, 3 dozen words. Lawyer go home, lawyer have dinner, lawyer look at a will and testament that he doesn't like. My story is way better and far more entertaining, don't you think? "I thought it was madness," he said, as he replaced the obnoxious paper in the safe. "And now I begin to fear it is disgrace," he says to himself in an empty room. With that he blew out his candle, put on a greatcoat, and set forth in the direction of Cavendish Square, that citadel of medicine where his friend the great Dr. Lanyon had his house and received his crowding patients. If anyone knows, it will be Lanyon, he had thought. You think it's a Victorian thing? Yeah, maybe. That would make sense. Now he's going to go bother a doctor who's busy with patients because he feels uncomfortable about a will. More words make you sound more important and show you are educated. Yeah, it's interesting how times have changed that way. It's like more words make it sound like you're a high school student trying to make up your essay. Hello, Sage. Yeah. Then you get to university and less words make it seem like you know that you make it seem like you know what you want to say and how to say it concisely. I am far more impressed by that myself. But I am not an author, I guess. All the hugging. Everybody hug. Actually and lovingly. The solemn butler knew and welcomed him. He was subjected to no stage of delay, but ushered direct from the door to the dining room where Dr. Lanyon sat alone over his wine. This was a hearty, healthy, dapper, red-faced gentleman with a shock of hair prematurely white and a boisterous and decided manner. How dignified. Yeah, no shower for Sage. Good work, Sage. And lucky you. At sight of Mr. Utterson, he sprang up from his chair and welcomed him with both hands. The geniality, as was the way of the man, was somewhat theatrical to the eye, but it reposed on the genuine feeling. For these two were old friends, old mates, both at school and college, both thorough respecters of themselves and of each other, and what does not always follow, men who thoroughly enjoyed each other's company. I am also not sufficiently stinky to require a shower, yay me. Although earlier, apparently Gwen was thinking I needed a shower. I guess I can smell better. Must be the air, the fan. After a little rambling talk, small talk, the lawyer led up to the subject which so disagreeably preoccupied his mind. I suppose, Lanyon, said he, you and I must be the two oldest friends that Henry Jekyll has. I wish the friends were younger, chuckled Dr. Lanyon, but I suppose we are, and what of that? I see little of him now. Indeed, said Utterson, I thought you had a bond of common interest. We had, was the reply, but it is more than 10 years since Henry Jekyll became too fanciful for me. He began to go wrong in mind, and though of course I continue to take an interest in him for old sake's sake, as they say, I see and I have seen devilish little of the man. Such unscientific balderdash, added the doctor, flushing suddenly purple, would have a strange Damon and Pythias. Whoever those are. Oh, we have ads coming up. All right, we're going to take our ad break. We're going to pop out for 3 minutes, and then we will return presently to continue our story. All right. I mean, thank you for hydration. Here, thank you for the fluids. Important. I gave you slurps. You can't say give me slurps after I gave you slurps. Congratulations on buttering up to my wife sufficiently for a gift sub. I say it with such bitterness in my voice. Erica slurs. Why is mobile Twitch so ass? I don't know, cause it's mobile Twitch. I guess you can listen to the VOD. Not your fault, I'm cute. Whose fault would that be then? Whose fault would that be if not for your own? Flex. Yeah, also, citation, please. I need evidence. Evidence of cuteness. Man, I am not like Rar. I'm mean. I'm mean to people who watch me. Please don't leave. I promise to never change. I don't know. I'm confused. Let us continue the story and pretend nothing happened. Ooh, ow, just punch my desk. Oh, let's see. Oh yes, the doctor says, flushing suddenly purple, because he's angry, I guess, would have a strange Damon and Pythias. This little spirit of temper was somewhat of a relief to Mr. Utterson. They have only differed on some point of science, he thought, and being a man of no scientific passions except in the matter of conveyance, he even added, "It is nothing worse than that." He gave his friend a few seconds to recover his composure, and then approached the question he had come to put. "Did you ever come across a protégé of his, one Hyde?" he asked. "Hyde?" repeated Lanyon. "No, never heard of him, since my time." That was the amount of information that the lawyer carried back with him to the great dark bed on which he tossed to and fro, until the small hours of the morning began to grow large. It was a night of little ease to his toiling mind, toiling in mere darkness and besieged by questions. Now I have Sidoen, I have completed your gauntlet. It is the great ellipsis emote. Yes. One of my favorite of all time. Darkness besieged by questions, yes. 6 o'clock struck on the bells of the church that was so conveniently near to Mr. Utterson's dwelling, and still he was digging at the problem. Hitherto it had touched him on the intellectual side alone, but now his imagination was also engaged, or rather enslaved. And as he lay and tossed in the gross darkness of the night and the curtained room, Mr. Enfield's tale went by before his mind in a scroll of lighted pictures. He would be aware of the great field of lamps, of a nocturnal city, then of the figure of a man walking swiftly, then of a child running from the doctor's, and then these met, and that human juggernaut trod the child down and passed on regardless of her screams. Or else he would see a room in a rich house where his friend lay asleep, dreaming and smiling at his dreams. And then the door of that room would be opened, the curtains of the bed plucked apart, the sleeper recalled, and lo, there would stand by his side a figure to whom power was given, and even at that dead hour he must rise and do its bidding. The figure in these two phases haunted the lawyer all night, and if at any time he dozed over, it was but to see it glide more stealthily through sleeping houses, or move the more swiftly, and still the more swiftly, even to dizziness, through wider labyrinths of lamp-lighted city, and at every street corner crush a child and leave her screaming. And still the figure had no face by which he might know it. Even in his dreams it had no face, or one that baffled him and melted before his eyes, and thus it was that sprang up and grew apace in the lawyer's mind a singularly strong, almost an inordinate curiosity to behold the features of the real Mr. Hyde. If he could but once set eyes on him, he thought the mystery would lighten and perhaps roll altogether away, as the habit of mysterious things when well examined. He might see a reason for his friend's strange preference or bondage, call it which you please, and even for the startling clause of the will. At least it would be a face worth seeing, the face of a man who was without bowels of mercy. He was without bowels of mercy, a face which had but to show itself to raise up in the mind of the unimpressionable Enfield a spirit of enduring hatred. Thank you for the hug, Sage. Even though it were angry. Anger is but a form of passion. Still so angry. Chill out, Sage. Just calm down, bro. From that time forward, Mr. Utterson began to haunt the door in the by-street of shops. In the morning before office hours, at noon when business was plenty and time scarce, at night under the face of the fogged city moon, by all lights, and at all hours of solitude or concourse, the lawyer was to be found on his chosen post. Wish I had this kind of free time. Seriously. Think Gwen is adding it because you haven't hugged her. You're gonna hug Gwen. Oh, this says, treat kitty cats with love. If he be Mr. Hyde, he had thought, I shall be Mr. Seek. Oh, how clever he is. And at last his patience was rewarded. It was a fine dry night, frost in the air, the streets as clean as a ballroom floor, the lamps unshaken by any wind, drawing a regular pattern of light and shadow. By 10 o'clock, when the shops were closed, the by-street was very solitary and, in spite of the low growl of London from all round, very silent. Small sounds carried far. Domestic sounds out of the houses were clearly audible on either side of the roadway, and the rumor of the approach of any passenger preceded him by a long time. Mr. Utterson had been some minutes at this post when he was aware of an odd, light footstep drawing near. In the course of his nightly patrols, he had long grown accustomed to the quaint effect with which the footfalls of a single person, while he is still a great way off, suddenly spring out distinct from the vast hum and clatter of the city. Yet his attention had never before been so sharply and decisively arrested, and it was with a strong, superstitious prevision of success that he withdrew into the entry of the court. Superstitious prevision. Before he could see. Pass the hug on to Gwen, please. Oh, she's on your lap now? Prior to that, she was sitting in my part of the couch. Yes, and there are plenty of hugs for kitty cats to be shared. The steps drew swiftly near and swelled out suddenly louder as they turned the end of the street. The lawyer looked forth from the entry, could soon see what manner of man he had to deal with. He was small and very plainly dressed, and the look of him, even at that distance, went somehow strongly against the watcher's inclination. But he made straight for the door. Crossing the roadway to save time, as he came, he drew a key from his pocket, like one approaching home. Mr. Utterson stepped out and touched him on the shoulder as he passed. Mr. Hyde, I think? You do that to me and you are 50% likely to get punched in the face. just as a sheer reflex, I think. Or I'll leap backwards, trip over myself, and land on my butt. One of those two. Only 50. Yeah, well, it's reflexive, right? Who knows what you'll do. Mr. Hyde shrank back with a hissing intake of the breath, but his fear was only momentary, and though he did not look the lawyer in the face, he answered coolly enough. That is my name. What do you want? I see you are going in, returned the lawyer. I am an old friend of Dr. Jekyll's, Mr. Utterson of Gaunt Street. You must have heard of my name, and meeting you so conveniently, I thought you might admit me. Imagine that. You leap at somebody in from dark shadows and think, you know what, I have a name you may have heard of, or I know someone you know. Can I come inside? Hands up, who's going to do that? You will not find Dr. Jekyll. He is from home, replied Mr. Hyde, blowing in the key, and then suddenly, but still without looking up. How did you know me? He asked. On your side, said Mr. Utterson, you will do me a favor. Sorry, will you do me a favor? With pleasure, replied the other. What shall it be? Will you let me see your face? Asked the lawyer. Mr. Hyde appeared to hesitate, and then, as if upon some sudden reflection, fronted about with an air of defiance, and the pair stared at each other pretty fixedly for a few seconds. Oh, it was love, I guess. Now I shall know you again, said Mr. Utterson. It may be useful. Yes, returned Mr. Hyde. It is as well we have met. Apropos, you should have my address. And he gave a number of a street in Soho. Good God, thought Mr. Utterson, can he too have been thinking of the will? but he kept his feelings to himself and only grunted in acknowledgment of the address. "And now," said the other, "how did you know me?" "By description," was the reply. "Whose description?" "Apropos, yeah, that's totally what I was thinking of saying, yeah." "We have common friends," said Mr. Utterson. "Common friends," echoed Mr. Hyde, a little hoarsely. "Who are they?" "Jekyll, for instance," said the lawyer. "He never told you," cried Mr. Hyde, with a flush of anger. "I did not think you would have lied." "Come," said Mr. Utterson, "that is not fitting language." "Yeah, but he knows you're lying." The other snarled aloud into a savage laugh, and the next moment, with extraordinary quickness, he had unlocked the door and disappeared into the house. The lawyer stood a while when Mr. Hyde had left him, the picture of disquietude. Then he began slowly to mount the street, pausing every step or two and putting his hand to his brow like a man in mental perplexity. Yeah, sorry. Spoilers, yes. No spoilers, please and thank you. The problem he was thus debating as he walked was one of a class that is rarely solved. Mr. Hyde was pale and dwarfish. He gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. He had a displeasing smile. He had borne himself to the lawyer with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and boldness, and he spoke with a husky, whispering, and somewhat broken voice. All these were points against him, but not all of these together could explain the hitherto unknown disgust, loathing, and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded him. "There must be something else," said the perplexed gentleman. "There is something more. If I could find a name for it, God bless me, the man seems hardly human. Something troglodytic, shall we say? Or can it be the old story of Dr. Fell? Or is it the mere radiance of a foul soul that thus transpires through and transfigures its clay containment?" Because clearly that happens a lot. The last, I think, for... Oh, my poor Harry Jekyll, if ever I read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend. Man, fuck the judgment in these people. Round the corner from the by-street there was a square of ancient handsome houses, now, for the most part, decayed from their high estate and let in flats and chambers to all sorts of conditions of men. Map engravers, architects, shady lawyers, and the agents of obscure enterprises. One house, however, second from the corner, was still occupied entire, and at the door of this, which wore a great air of wealth and comfort, so it was now plunged in darkness, except for the fanlight. Mr. Utterson stopped and knocked. A well-dressed, elderly servant opened the door. "Is Dr. Jekyll at home, Poole?" asked the lawyer. "I will see, Mr. Utterson," said Poole, admitting the visitor as he spoke into a large, low-roofed, comfortable hall, paved with flags, warmed, after the fashion of a country house, by a bright open fire, and furnished with costly cabinets of oak. "Will you wait here by the fire, sir, or shall I give you a light in the dining room?" "Here, thank you," said the lawyer, and he drew near and leaned on the tender fender. On the tall fender. I read ahead there, I guess, and mixed up the words. This hall, in which he was now left alone, was a pet fancy of his friend the doctor's, and Utterson himself was wont to speak of it as the pleasantest room in London. Tender fender, make of that what you will. Pleasantest room in London. But tonight there was a shudder in his blood. The face of Hyde sat on his memory. He felt what was rare within him, a nausea and distaste of life, and in the gloom of his spirits he seemed to read a menace in the flickering of the firelight on the polished cabinets and the uneasy starting of the shadow of the roof. He was ashamed of his relief when Poole presently returned to announce that Dr. Jekyll was gone out. In my brain, my thought was like, this must be how Trump feels when he sees Mexicans. It's so overblown. I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old dissecting room. Poole. That was actually dialogue. I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old dissecting room, Poole, he said. Is that right, when Dr. Jekyll is from home? Quite right, Mr. Utterson, sir, replied the servant. Mr. Hyde has a key. Your master seems to repose a great deal of trust in that young man, Poole, resumed the other musingly. Yes, sir, he does indeed, said Poole. We have all orders to obey him. I do not think I ever met Mr. Hyde, asked Utterson. Oh, dear no, sir. He never dines here, replied the butler. Indeed, we see very little of him on this side of the house. He mostly comes and goes by the laboratory. Well, good night, Poole. Good night, Mr. Utterson. And the lawyer set out homeward with a very heavy heart. Poor Harry Jekyll, he thought. My mind misgives me he is in deep waters. He was wild when he was young, a long while ago to be sure, but in the law of God there is no statute of limitations. Aye, it must be that. The ghost of some old sin, the cancer of some concealed disgrace, punishment coming pediclado years after memory has forgotten and self-love condoned the fault. And the lawyer, scared by the thought, brooded a while on his own past, groping in all the corners of memory, lest by chance some jack-in-the-box of an old iniquity should leap to light there. His past was fairly blameless. Few men could read the rolls of their life with less apprehension, yet he was humbled to the dust by the many ill things he had done, and raised up again into a sober and fearful gratitude by the many he had come so near to doing, yet avoided. And then, by a return on his former subject, he conceived a spark of hope. This Master Hyde, if he were studied, thought he, must have secrets of his own, black secrets by the look of him, secrets compared to which poor Jekyll's worst would be like sunshine. Things cannot continue as they are. It turns me cold to think of this creature stealing like a thief to Harry's bedside. Poor Harry, what awakening, and the danger of it. For if this Hyde suspects the existence of the will, he may grow impatient to inherit. I must put my shoulders to the wheel, if Jekyll will but let me. He added, if Jekyll will only let me. For once more he saw before his mind's eye, as clear as transparency, the strange clauses of the will. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have here ourselves a white knight, a kind man, ever too eager to impose his moral and ethical standards upon others despite his own failings and the lack of an invitation. I see. He's thinking of, it's like, he doesn't know him anymore. Barely knows him. Yeah, anyways, maybe he's just being a good friend. Sure, maybe he's looking out for him. Who knows? We have 40 minutes left in the stream. I think we'll do one more chapter. We'll probably wrap it up there at this space. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Chapter 3. Dr. Jekyll was quite at ease. These chapter titles are a little casual, I think. A fortnight later, by excellent good fortune, the doctor gave one of his pleasant dinners to some 5 or 6 old cronies, all intelligent, reputable men, and all judges of good wine. And Mr. Utterson so contrived that he remained behind after the others had departed. You mean he thinks he is being... Yeah, he thinks he's being a good... Yeah, it's all subjective to his opinion in that case, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Utterson contrived to remain behind. This was no new arrangement, but a thing that had befallen many scores of times. Where Utterson was liked, he was liked well. Hosts loved to detain the dry lawyer when the light-hearted and loose-tongued had already their foot on the threshold. They liked to sit a while in his unobtrusive company, practicing for solitude, sobering their minds in the man's rich silence after the expense and strain of gaiety. To this rule, Dr. Jekyll was no exception, as he now sat on the opposite side of the fire, a large, well-made, smooth-faced man of 50, with something of a stylish cast perhaps, but every mark of capacity and kindness you could see by his looks that he cherished for Mr. Utterson a sincere and warm affection. "I have been wanting to speak to you, Jekyll," began the latter. "You know that will of yours." A close observer might have gathered that the topic was distasteful, but the doctor carried it off gaily. "My poor Utterson," said he, "you are unfortunate in such a client. I never saw a man so distressed as you were by my will, unless it were that hide-bound pedant Lanyon at what he called my scientific heresies. Oh, I know he's a good fellow. You needn't frown. An excellent fellow, and I always mean to see more of him. But a hide-bound pedant, that's like the root of pedantant, I guess. For all that, an ignorant, blatant pedant. It's ped and ant. It's just like, anyways. Pedant. Oh, is it pedant? We're going to look this one up now. My syllables are broken, I think. Listening. Pedant. It's just pedant. Yeah, okay. A pedant. All right. I don't know why this word is taking so much of my attention. A blatant pedant. I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon. You know I never approved of it, pursued Utterson, ruthlessly disregarding the fresh topic. My will? Yes, certainly I know that, said the doctor, a trifle sharply. You have told me so. Well, I tell you so again, continued the lawyer. I have been learning something of young Hyde. The large, handsome face of Dr. Jekyll grew pale to the very lips, and there came a blackness about his eyes. I do not care to hear more, said he. This is a matter I thought we had agreed to drop. What I heard was abominable, said Utterson. It can make no change. You do not understand my position, returned the doctor, with a certain incoherency of manner. I am painfully situated, Utterson. My position is a very strange one. It is one of those affairs that cannot be mended by talking. Jekyll, said Utterson, you know me. I am a man to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence. I make no doubt I can get you out of it. My good Utterson, said the doctor, this is very good of you. This is downright good of you, and I cannot find words to thank you in. You could just say thank you. I believe you fully. I would trust you before any man alive. I before myself, if I could make the choice. But indeed, it isn't what you fancy. It is not as bad as that. It is not as bad as that. And just to put your good heart at rest, I will tell you one thing. The moment I chose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. I give you my hand upon that, and I thank you again and again. I will just add one little word, Utterson, that I'm sure you'll take in good part. This is a private matter, and I beg of you to let us sleep. Translation, bro, back off. Yeah, let it go, bro. Utterson reflected, looking in the fire. I have no doubt you are perfectly right, he said at last, getting to his feet. Well, but since we have touched upon this business, and for the last time, I hope, continued the doctor, there is one point I should like you to understand. I have really a very great interest in poor Hyde. I know you have seen him. He told me so, and I fear he was rude. But I do sincerely take a very great interest in that young man, and if I am taken away, Utterson, I wish you to promise me that you will bear with him and get his rights for him. I think you would, if you knew all, and it would be a weight off my mind if you would promise. I can't pretend that I shall ever like him, said the lawyer. I don't ask that, pleaded Jekyll, laying his hand upon the other's arm. I only ask for justice. I only ask to help him for my sake when I am no longer here. Utterson heaved an irrepressible sigh. Well, said he, I promise. Holy crap, that was a chapter. There's so much scrolling to do, but that was a chapter. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And there's like, we can read the next one. You'll read the next one. 4, I guess? I think. Chapter 4, the Carew murder case. Nearly a year later, in the month of October 18, London was startled by a crime of singular ferocity and rendered all the more notable by the high position of the victim. The details were few and startling. A maid servant living alone in a house not far from the river had gone upstairs to bed about 11. Although a fog rolled over the city in the small hours, the early part of the night was cloudless, and the lane, which the maid's window overlooked, was brilliantly lit by the full moon. It seems she was romantically given, for she sat down upon her box, which stood immediately under the window, and fell into a dream of musing. Never, she used to say with streaming tears when she narrated that experience, never had she felt more at peace with all men or thought more kindly of the world, and as she so sat, she became aware of an aged, beautiful gentleman with white hair drawing near along the lane, and advancing to meet him, another and very small gentleman, to whom at first she paid less attention. When they had come within speech, which was just under the maid's eyes, the older man bowed and accosted the other with a very pretty manner of politeness. It did not seem as if the subject of his address were of great importance. Indeed, from his pointing, it sometimes appeared as if he were only inquiring his way. But the moon shone on his face as he spoke, and the girl was pleased to watch it. It seemed to breathe such an innocent, an old-world kindness of disposition, yet with something high, too, as of the well-founded self-content. Of the well-founded self-content. Presently her eye wandered to the other, and she was surprised to recognize him, a certain Mr. Hyde, who had once visited her master, and for whom she had conceived a dislike. No kidding. He had in his hand a heavy cane, with which he was trifling, but he answered never a word, and seemed to listen with an ill-contained impatience. And then, all of a sudden, he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping with his foot, brandishing the cane, and carrying on, as the maid described it, like a madman. Thank you for the lurk clue. The old gentleman took a step back, with the air of one very much surprised and a trifle hurt, and at that Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clubbed him to the earth. And next moment, with ape-like fury, he was tramping his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of blows, under which the bones were audibly shattered and the body jumped upon the roadway. At the horror of these sights and sounds, the maid fainted. It's probably saved her life. It was 2 o'clock when she came to herself and called for the police. The murderer was gone long ago, but there lay his victim in the middle of the lane, incredibly mangled. The stick with which the deed had been done, although it was of some rare and very tough heavy wood, had broken in the middle under the stress of this insensate cruelty, and one splintered half rolled about in the neighboring gutter. The other, without doubt, had been carried away by the murderer. Oh, we have the potential for a smoking gun. A purse and gold watch were found upon the victim, but no cards or papers, except a sealed and stamped envelope which he had been probably carrying to the post, and which bore the name and address of Mr. Utterson. Ew. This was brought to the lawyer the next morning, before he was out of bed, and he had no sooner seen it and been told of the circumstances than he shot out a solemn lip. "I shall say nothing till I have seen the body," said he, "and this may be very serious. Have the kindness to wait while I dress." And with the same grave countenance he hurried through his breakfast and drove to the police station, whither the body had been carried. As soon as he came into the cell, he nodded. "Yes," said he. "I recognize him. I am sorry to say that this is Sir Danvers Carew." Carew. "Good God, sir," exclaimed the officer. "Oh, hydrate. Thank you. I will hydrate now." I hope your mobile heard that. And okay, stand up and flex and sit upright. Oh, and head. Thank you for the head pat. I still have yet to get that out of my face yet. All right. All right. All right. All right. I stretched. I'm sitting back down in an upright position, and my face is being mauled. There, very good. We have accounted for all of the redeems. Thank you, thank you. Where are we? "Good God, sir," exclaimed the officer. "Is it possible?" "A body's literally in front of you, friend." And the next moment his eyes lighted up with professional ambition. "This will make a deal of noise," he said, "and perhaps you can help us to the man. Yes, to the man." And he briefly narrated what the maid had said, and showed the broken stick. Mr. Utterson had already quailed at the name of Hyde, but when the stick was laid before him, he could doubt no longer. Broken and battered as it was, he recognized it for one that he had himself presented many years to Henry Jekyll. "Is this Mr. Hyde a person of small stature?" he inquired. "Particularly small, and particularly wicked-looking is what the maid calls him," said the officer. Mr. Utterson reflected, and then raising his head, "If you will come with me in my cab," he said, "I think I can take you to his house." It was by this time about 9 in the morning, and the first fog of the season. A great chocolate-colored pall lowered over heaven, but the wind was continually charging and routing these embattled vapors, so that as the cab crawled from street to street, Mr. Utterson beheld a marvelous number of degrees and hues of twilight. For here it would be dark, like the back end of evening, and there would be a glow of a rich lurid brown, like the light of some strange conflagration, and here, for a moment, the fog would be quite broken up, and a haggard shaft of daylight would glance in between the swirling wreaths. Wreaths. The dismal quarter of Soho, seen under these changing glimpses, with its muddy ways and slatternly passengers, and its lamps, which had never been extinguished or had been kindled afresh to combat this mournful reinvasion of darkness, seemed, in the lawyer's eyes, like a district of some city in a nightmare. The thoughts of his mind, besides, were of the gloomiest dye, and when he glanced at the companion of his drive, he was conscious of some touch of that terror of the law and the law's officers, which may at times assail the most honest. As the cab drew up before the address indicated, the fog lifted a little and showed him a dingy street, a gin palace, a low French eating house, a shop for the retail of penny numbers and two-penny salads, many ragged children huddled in the doorways, and many women of many different nationalities passing out, key in hand, to have a morning glass. And the next moment the fog settled down again upon that part, as brown as umber, and cutting him off from his blackguardly surroundings. This was the home of Henry Jekyll's favorite, of a man who was heir to $250,000 sterling. An ivory-faced and silvery-haired old woman opened the door. She had an evil face, smoothed by hypocrisy, whatever that means, but her manners were excellent. Yes, she said, this was Mr. Hyde's, but he was not at home. He had been in that night very late, but he had gone away again in less than an hour. There was nothing strange in that. His habits were very irregular, and he was often absent. For instance, it was nearly 2 months since she had seen him till yesterday. Very well, then. We wish to see his rooms, said the lawyer, and when the woman began to declare it was impossible, I had better tell you who this person is, he added. This is Inspector Newcomen of Scotland Yard. A flash of odious joy appeared upon the woman's face. Ah, said she. Is he in trouble? What has he done? Mr. Utterson and the inspector exchanged glances. He don't seem a very popular character, observed the latter. And now, my good woman, just let me and this gentleman have a look about us. Yeah, I guess you didn't need a warrant back then. In the whole extent of the house, which but for the old woman remained otherwise empty, Mr. Hyde had only used a couple of rooms, but these were furnished with luxury and good taste. A closet was filled with wine, the plate was of silver, the napery elegant. A good picture hung upon the walls, a gift, as Utterson supposed, from Henry Jekyll, who was much a connoisseur of the carpets as much a connoisseur, and the carpets were of many plies and agreeable in color. Sorry, my lips decided to not do the things. No warrant needed if the people that work for you don't like you. Yeah, yeah, exactly. At this moment, however, the rooms bore every mark of having been recently and hurriedly ransacked. Clothes lay about the floor, with their pockets inside out. Lock-fast drawers stood open, and on the hearth there lay a pile of grey ashes, as though many papers had been burned. From these embers the inspector disinterred the butt end of a green checkbook, which had resisted the action of the fire. The other half of the stick was found behind the door, and as this clinched his suspicions, the officer declared himself delighted. A visit to the bank, where several £1,000 were found to be lying to the murderer's credit, completed his gratification. Hello, Misa. Welcome in, dear. Thank you for being a first-time chatter. I'm glad you're being cozy. Yep, you're a first-time chatter. Congratulations, you have been promoted. You're now a second-time chatter. Where the hell was I? Oh, yes. Inspector is being gratified. You may depend upon it, sir, he told Mr. Utterson. I have him in my hand. He must have lost his head, or he never would have left the stick, or, above all, burned the checkbook. Why? Money is life to the man. We have nothing to do but wait for him at the bank and get out the handbills. This last, however, was not so easy of an accomplishment, for Mr. Hyde had numbered few familiars. Even the master of the servant maid had only seen him twice. His family could nowhere be traced. He had never been photographed, and the few who could describe him differed wildly. as common observers will. Only on one point were they agreed, and that was the haunting sense of unexpressed deformity with which the fugitive impressed his beholders. He has beholders. Alright. These chapters are a lot shorter. There's only like a few of them, and yet we are quite a ways down. How long is this one? Alright. There's probably another 20-minute chapter. We'll do this chapter 2, and then we'll really call it. I think, yes. What chapter number am I up to anyways? I have no clue. We are at Incident of the Letter. So if I go up to the top, Incident of the Letter is the, so 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth chapter. Okay. Chapter 5, Incident of the Letter. It was late in the afternoon when Mr. Utterson found his way to Dr. Jekyll's door, where he was at once admitted by Poole and carried down by the kitchen offices and across a yard which had once been a garden, to the building which was indifferently known as the laboratory, or dissecting rooms. Dissecting rooms. The doctor had bought the house from the heirs of a celebrated surgeon, and his own tastes, being rather chemical than anatomical, had changed the designation of the block at the bottom of the garden. It was the first time that the lawyer had been received in that part of his friend's quarters, and he eyed the dingy, windowless structure with curiosity, that's not to code, and gazed around with a distasteful sense of strangeness as he crossed the theater, once crowded with eager students and now lying gaunt and silent, the tables laden with chemical apparatus, the floor strewn with crates and littered with packing straw, and the light falling dimly through the foggy cupola. Cupola. I am now out of water. No more hydrations are possible. At the further end, a flight of stairs mounted to a door covered with red baize, and through this Mr. Utterson was at last received into the doctor's cabinet. It was a large room fitted round with glass presses, furnished, among other things, with a cheval glass? A Cahival glass. I like Cahival. Yeah, we're going to go with Cahival glass, and a business table. And looking out upon the court by 3 dusty windows barred with iron. The fire burned in the grate. A lamp was set lighted on the chimney itself, for even in the house the fog began to lie thickly. And there, close up to the warmth, sat Dr. Jekyll, looking deathly sick. He did not rise to meet his visitor, but held out a cold hand and bade him welcome in a changed voice. "And now," said Mr. Utterson, as soon as Poole had left them, "you have heard the news?" The doctor shuddered. "They were crying it in the square," he said. "I heard them in my dining room." "One word," said the lawyer. "Carew was my client, but so are you, and I want to know what I am doing. You have not been mad enough to hide this fellow." "Utterson, I swear to God," cried the doctor, "I swear to God I will never set eyes on him again. I bind my honor to you that I am done with him in this world. It is all at an end, and indeed he does not want my help. You do not know him as I do. He is safe. He is quite safe. Mark my words. He will never more be heard of." The lawyer listened gloomily. He didn't like his friend's feverish manner. "You seem pretty sure of him," said he, "and for your sake I hope you may be right. If it came to a trial, your name might appear." I like how it's like, we're not going to get justice for the man who was murdered, or his family perhaps, or his friends and loved ones. But Hopefully your name will be okay as long as we don't go to trial and he's never found again. That's quite all right. Yet we were talking about justice a few chapters ago. Good Lord. The hypocrisy is thick. Thicker than the fucking fog. Holy crap, that was nasty, nasty air. I'm quite sure of him, replied Jekyll. I have grounds for certainty that I cannot share with anyone, but there is one thing on which you may advise me. I have received a letter, and I am at a loss whether I should show it to the police. I should like to leave it in your hands, Utterson. You would judge wisely, I am sure. I have so great a trust in you. You fear, I suppose, that it might lead to his detection, asked the lawyer. No, said the other. I cannot say that I care what becomes of Hyde. I am quite done with him. I was thinking of my own character, which this hateful business has rather exposed. Utterson ruminated for a while. He was surprised at his friend's selfishness, and yet relieved by it. Well, said he, at last, let me see the letter. The letter was written in an odd, upright hand and signed Edward Hyde, and it signified, briefly enough, that the writer's benefactor, Dr. Jekyll, whom he had so long unworthily repaid for 1,000 generosities, need labor under no alarm for his safety, as he had means of escape on which he placed a sure dependence. The lawyer liked this letter well enough. It put a better color on the intimacy than he had looked for, and he blamed himself for some of his past suspicions. Have you the envelope? He asked. I burned it, replied Jekyll, before I thought what I was about. But it bore no postmark. The note was handed in. Shall I keep this and sleep upon it? Asked Utterson. I wish you to judge for me entirely, was the reply. I have lost confidence in myself. Well, I shall consider, returned the lawyer. And now one word more. It was Hyde who dictated the terms in your will about that disappearance. The doctor seemed seized with a qualm of faintness. He shut his mouth tight and nodded. I knew it, said Utterson. He meant to murder you. You had a fine escape. I have had what is far more to the purpose. I have had what is returned the doctor solemnly. I have had a lesson. Oh God, Utterson, what a lesson I have had. And he covered his face for a moment with his hands. On his way out, the lawyer stopped and had a word or two with Poole. By the by, said he, there was a letter handed in today. What was the messenger like? But Poole was positive nothing had come, except by post, and only circulars by that, he added. This news sent off the visitor with his fears renewed. Plainly the letter had come by the laboratory door. Possibly, indeed, it had been written in the cabinet, and if that were so, it must be differently judged and handled with more caution. The newsboy, as he went, were crying themselves hoarse along the footways. Special edition, shocking murder of an MP. That was the funeral oration of one friend and client, and he could not help a certain apprehension lest the good name of another should be sucked down into the eddy of the scandal. It was, at least, a ticklish decision that he had to make, and self-reliant as he was by habit, he began to cherish a longing for advice. It was not to be had directly, but perhaps he thought it might be fished for. Presently after, he sat on one side of his own hearth, with Mr. Guest. That is an amazing name for a character, Mr. Guest. No one ever visits him. He's never the host. His head clerk. Upon the other, and midway between, at a nicely calculated distance from the fire, a bottle of particular old wine that had long dwelt unsunned in the foundations of his house. The fog still slept on the wing above the drowned city, where the lamps glimmered like carbuncles. Carbuncles? Carbuncles. And through the muffled and smother of these falling clouds, the procession of the town's life was still rolling in through the great arteries with the sound of with a sound as of a mighty wind. But the room was gay with firelight. In the bottle, the acids were long ago resolved. The imperial dye had softened with time as the color grows richer in the stained windows. And the glow of hot autumn afternoons on hillside vineyards was ready to be set free and to dispense the fogs of London. Insensibly, the lawyer melted. There was no man from whom he kept fewer secrets than Mr. Guest, and he was not always sure that he kept as many as he meant. Guest had often been on business to the doctor's. He knew Poole. He could scarce have failed to hear of Mr. Hyde's familiarity about the house. He might draw conclusions. Was it not as well, then, that he should see a letter which put that mystery to right? And above all, since Guest, being a great student and critic of handwriting, would consider the step natural and obliging. The clerk, besides, was a man of counsel. He could scarce read so a strange a document without dropping a remark, and by that remark Mr. Utterson might shape his future course. "This is a sad business about Mr. Danvers," he said. "Yes, sir, indeed. It has elicited a great deal of public feeling," returned Guest. "The man, of course, was mad." "I should like to hear your views on that," replied Utterson. "I have a document here in his handwriting. It is between ourselves, for I scarce know what to do about it. It is an ugly business at best, but there it is, quite in your way, a murderer's autograph." Guest's eyes brightened, and he sat down at once and studied it with passion. "No, sir," he said, "not mad, but it is an odd hand. And by all accounts a very odd letter. Sorry, a very odd writer," added the lawyer. Just then the servant entered with a note. "Is that from Dr. Jekyll, sir?" inquired the clerk. "I thought I knew the writing. Anything private, Mr. Utterson?" "Only an invitation to dinner. Why? Do you want to see it?" "That's a very convenient invitation at that particular moment." "One moment. I thank you, sir." And the clerk laid the 2 sheets of paper alongside and sedulously compared their contents. "Thank you, sir," he said at last, returning both. "It is a very interesting autograph." There was a pause, during which Mr. Utterson struggled with himself. "Why did you compare them, Guest?" he inquired suddenly. "Well, sir," returned the clerk, "there's a rather singular resemblance. The 2 hands are in many points identical, only differently sloped." "Rather quaint," said Utterson. "It is, as you say, rather quaint," returned Guest. "I wouldn't speak of this note, you know," said the master. "No, sir," said the clerk, "I understand." But no sooner was Mr. Utterson alone that night than he locked the note into his safe, where it reposed from that time forward. "What?" he thought. "Henry Jekyll forged for a murderer?" And his blood ran cold in his veins. And that's where we'll pause. And we definitely need another book after this one for next stream, I think, on Monday. So I'll have to work on that throughout the week, too. Many things to work on. Damn, we have ads starting in 3-4 minutes. So we're probably, I'm going to just hit the snooze. And because we are going to end here and find someone to write out to. This is a far lighter subject matter, which is nice. I can talk a little more loosely and mess about with the contents of the book. Holy crap, the characters in here are a colorful bunch. Yes, a colorful bunch of characters, that's for sure. Wow. Thank you everyone for joining. We had a raid that was amazing. I have to scroll to find the horrible person. M Star Otter. I don't think I know this person. M Star Otter. I'm gonna go look. Thank you for joining me, Queen. You're very welcome. Oh, I've had such a chill night. I opened her channel and all of a sudden here, like, oh, that make me jump. Cool. I'll have to check them out later. And everyone for hanging around and listening to my rambling. I hope you had a good night. All right, let's find a person we can send everyone off to who is hopefully a quiet night for everybody else. Oh, there's like literally someone at the top that might be good. Good night, Clue. Thank you very, very much. Can I just into chat? Oh, this one seems pretty good. Awesome. Excellent. We're going to head off. We're going to raid someone named Written by Liv. And quickly, too, because she's already been streaming for 5 hours.